Hello, and welcome to the super secret episode of If Super Says It, episode 11. I think Yardy's been on like 3 or 4 of these now. So it's almost like we're just duo podcasting or video casting. But this is the SI 23 prediction podcast. It's just myself and Yardy. How's it going?
I'm very excited to predict a very, very big tournament. I mean, that's how it's going. I'm ready. I'm hyped. I'm prepped.
So I don't think it's been officially announced. And if you're not allowed to talk about it, then just act like I'm making shit up. But since the last time we spoke, you are now like a pro league head coach controlling one of the 10 spots in the league. Are you going power hungry?
In some capacity, I wouldn't put power hungry. I'm hungry to win, and
Yeah.
I'll do what it takes to win. That's how I put it. And I think as a GM, you know what that means.
Yeah. Sometimes, your friends just don't cut it. That's how I would put it.
Exactly.
So yeah, interested to see what Mirage is going to end up looking like, because from what I understand, I mean, we've had all the and this is kind of sidetracking a little bit, but we've had all the announcements of like teams are rebuilding their rosters, but there hasn't really been an official announcement like they're just leaving Siege. So I guess there's either the potential for because there's like so many free agents right now, like some interesting teams next stage, or less teams next stage. I guess it remains to be seen.
Well, there are top tier players like Packer and stuff available. So hypothetically, if I were to build a team, let's just say that it's gonna be a crazy looking team with Packer and Kool-Aid. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's. I'm shaking just thinking about it. We might have to bring in Palu to deal with that. That might have to be our next acquisition.
The only one that can stop him.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just get right into it, and I think we go group by group. From what I understand, SI is running off of the same format, except the points is a little different. So if you win your match in groups, you get 4 points if you win 2-0. If you win 2-1 in groups, you get 3 points. If you lose 2-1, you get 1 point. And if you lose 2-0, you get 0 points. So essentially they're trying to reward a like dominant victory more and reward a overtime, like a loss, less. So like you don't get a bonus point just because you lost in a closer manner, basically. I think that's a good change. I don't know if you remember, like last year there was a situation where team 1 had like more wins than one of the other teams, but like they didn't make it out because they had less points because the other team had lost in overtime more than they did or something. So I mean, small change, I think. I don't think it matters too much, but it could change maybe one spot or so. And so, go ahead.
I think the team 1 thing, yeah, that's a good change because they had more wins than I believe it was Navi or MIBR. I know both those. I can't remember which one, but MIBR, if you recall, went on to make a deep invite run.
Yeah.
And my dog has my phone. But yeah, I would be very angry too if that happened to me. So I understand the point change.
Well, to be fair, that team that got screwed over also had Alamal, so they probably wouldn't have gone very far anyway, since he has yet to place higher than top 8 without Lagonis on his team. But that's, neither here or there, I guess. So the way it works is the first seed in each group gets a bye in winner's bracket, so they go immediately to like round 2 of winner's bracket. The second seed of each group gets to pick who they play out of all the third seeds. And then the third seed gets a start in winner's bracket, but they don't really get a say in who they play. The 4th seed starts in loser's bracket, 5th seed's out. So only 4 teams are eliminated from group stage, so you feel pretty shit if you don't make it out of group stage, considering literally 80% of each group makes it out. Obviously, when I was playing last year, our goal was to just get top 3 because we didn't care. Like, obviously, having the bye is great, but if you get top 3, you start in winner's bracket, so you get 2 chances. That could literally be the difference between winning or losing a tournament. For instance, TSM last year, they came through losers. They lost in winners finals to TSM or to Empire, and then they came back through and beat them in the finals. So having that extra chance does matter, and as long as you're starting in winners bracket, that's all you really want. Like we started in winners bracket as the 3rd seed, got top 6. I think TSM was also the 3rd seed. Obviously, they won. So basically, you're just trying to avoid being 4th or 5th in your group because you don't want to start with only one chance because you don't get room for error there. So looking at Group A, which I think a lot of people think is the group of death, and I don't know if I would say it's a group of death. I feel like it's maybe just the group where the teams are more even. We have W7M, SSG, Koi, which is the former Rogue roster that won Berlin, G2 with Benja in place of Citizen, and Elevate, who I think had actually like a pretty bad stage in APAC, but they do always seem to be a pretty strong international team. What are you thinking about this group looking at it?
I'm gonna agree with your group of death point. I think it's the group of death not because there's there's a multitude of great teams. I think it's because there's no bad team, right? Like in every other group, you can kind of pinpoint the weakest team, but here it's like there really is no weakest team. You can make an argument for every team except W7M being the weakest team. So usually I would go bottom up, but I think it's safe to say that W7M is the strongest team here. So I'm just gonna put them at 1 off the bat, and the next 4 teams, I mean, it can go any either way. I don't think any of the next 4 teams, I will say, have winning potential. I think Rogue or KOI or Koi, however it's said, is good, but I just don't feel like they have that miracle run in them again. Because if you remember how Berlin went, it kind of was a miracle run. Like they were down 5-4 against NIP, and they had to win out the next 3 Villa attacks to make playoffs. It was kind of like the Team One Mexico situation where they were down and had to get a certain amount of rounds no matter what, came back, won, and had momentum. G2, I think obviously had a downgrade, a forced downgrade. It's very hard to upgrade from someone like Citizen, but I do think Benja's good. I think he was a good enough replacement
He's
considering
probably the best replacement that they could get given the time frame they had. I agree.
yeah, they definitely got a good replacement. Elevates had the same 5. In SSG, I think SSG's claim here is they won the open quals, and open qual momentum is a huge thing if you just look at historically.
Yeah.
Uh, 2 of the last 3 invite winners were open qual champions. So I think the team that's going to get eliminated here, I'm going to take a long shot, but I'm going to say it's Koi or KOI. I think what's going to happen is they're going to have the Team One thing where they won a major, and then it kind of crumbles at the biggest event of the year. So I'm just going to put them at 5th. By no means do I think they're a weak team. I just think they're the weakest in this group. I wanted to put G2 there, but G2 always they're like DZ, and I'll explain that later. But G2 always finds a way out.
I
Like they
do have
just
a
always,
question. Did you
yeah.
see Fabian's tweet where he said they were scrimming? I think it's either like an MXPL team or an MXCL team. And they were like, these guys are nasty. Like they would be good in Pro League and EU or NA. And I was like reading that. And I couldn't tell if he was memeing because that team that he was talking about are like one of those teams where they're so bad, like we don't even scrim them because it's like a waste of our time. So like if that's a serious tweet and they're actually going like neck to neck with like an MXCL team or whatever those guys are, then I think that's not good. But I honestly don't know if that's like a meme or not. Like that tweet was insane.
I don't know. Yeah, I remember I sent you the tweet, and I saw it in a group chat someone sent it. They're like, "How?" So I've never heard of those guys, and that's kind of crazy if I haven't heard of them.
Yeah.
And someone in this group chat I'm in, I can't remember who, but it just someone said, like, how is G2 to the point where they're getting shit on by these guys? We couldn't tell if it was a troll or not. It was a crazy tweet, but judging by their replies, the players' replies on the other team, I don't think it was a troll, which is not a good sign for G2. But in the end, like a game day can prevail the terrible results of practice, and G2 has been in America for a while boot camping, so hopefully they figured it out. But they kind of have that DZ effect where like they always will I feel like they'll just never get grouped, like they'll never get last, especially in a group of 5 where you only get one knockout. So for that I'm going to put them at 4. I'm gonna put Elevate at 3 because I think Elevate does have a high ceiling.
Yeah.
Uh, they almost took down W7M at Berlin. They should have played at Charlotte, but they couldn't. They did good last invite. They kind of have that X factor. They dominate every NA team at the last invite, and they have a new analyst who, I mean, obviously every team has their analyst, but I think they'll be just as prepared. I think they took another step to really reach that global level. SSG too, because I think they have the open qual power, and I just think historically they're set for a deep run. They made it to upper bracket last year in the W7M1, but a very easy W7M1. I don't think it'll be a close one for them.
Yeah, for me, looking at this group, I think W7M are obviously the favorites of the group. I will say that one thing with W7M is, in my opinion, they seemingly have had really good group stages where they look like unreal, and they've faltered a little bit once they get into the best of 3 playoffs. They lost. So at Yonkoping, they beat Black Dragons 2-0, which is another LATAM team, and then they lost in the finals, or they lost in the semifinals to Liquid 1-2, which is another LATAM team. In Berlin, they beat Elevate 2-1 in playoffs, and then they lost 2-0 to FaZe, another LATAM team. And in Charlotte, I don't think they made playoffs because obviously they were dealing with the like online thing. So I do think there is some questions about W7M and best of 3s. Obviously, I still think they're a very, very good team and still the favorite for this group. But I wouldn't be shocked if like SSG or even Elevate won the group. I think those are the top 3 in my opinion. I think W7M, SSG, and Elevate is probably how I would pick it. I do think I'm giving Elevate possibly too much credit because they did not have a good APAC stage 3. They didn't even make the major, and obviously if we've seen anything, it's kind of that APAC outside of Elevate, to be honest, don't compete that well with the rest of the world. And for whatever reason, Elevate do seemingly have a better chance when they play the other teams. But it wouldn't shock me if Elevate got grouped. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to be able to take G2 over Koi. I know Koi, and for those of you who don't know, Koi is Rogue. And they won the Berlin Major, and then they didn't make the Major from Stage 1 or Stage 3. So it's kind of weird with them. Like, they have the high of, like, they can literally win the tournament, but then these other stages, they're not even making it out of their region. So
They
that's
have a crazy
obviously
range.
Yeah, so like obviously you're looking at that and it's like you don't know how to interpret it. I think the and they did actually lose to Elevate at the last Invitational as well. They lost 1-2 to them. Obviously slightly different teams of it, but I think for me the reason I'm not going to say they're last is if I just think Rogue or Koi versus G2, I think Koi is better. Like, they've been better in their region than G2. So I think having 2 EU teams here, it's hard for me to say, like, G2 is going to beat Koi or outplays Koi when, you know, and this is just based off the region. I think Rogue have still been better in their region. Like, Rogue won a tournament. You have to say they're better than G2 has been. And we also have the unknown of, you know, Benja playing instead of Citizen, where I think it's a worse player, but it could be one of those situations where, like, I read an interview from Doki earlier where he was basically saying, like, they were really worried losing Citizen because, you know, you can't replace him. Like, he's always their kill leader, basically. But at the same time, Citizen made it known to them, essentially, that he was, like, demotivated playing on the team. Like, it just had come to that point where they had been, I think Citizen was on G2 for 2 or 3 years, and they kind of were stagnating a bit. So it's possible just like new blood on the team helps reinvigorate them, even though it may be a downgrade of a player. So we'll see there. I think I would go W7M, SSG, Elevate, Koi, G2, but it wouldn't surprise me if Elevate got grouped here, and it wouldn't surprise me if like SSG won the group. I think those were would be the two situations I would say. I don't see I kind of disagree with you about Koi getting grouped. I think they have the ability to play at such a high level that they can win a couple of games or maybe even just one game. But if they get 1-2-0, that's like 4 points. I think if you get 1-2-0, you don't get grouped basically because somebody has to shit the bed essentially. Like
Mhm.
I don't think every team in this group is going to win a game. That just seems like that would be crazy even. So I don't know. That's a tough group. And so moving on to Group B, we have Group B is a very interesting group to me. Obviously, I'm biased here, and I'm also not going to try to predict it too much because Sonics are in this group. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Sonics, but I don't want to jinx them. But there's a possibility that this is the best EU team, the best NA team, and the best LATAM, or not LATAM, LATAM team in the same group. Now, obviously, I think BDS, as of late, have kind of eclipsed Wolves. But Wolves are the most consistent EU team. Over the course of the year, they've, I think, made every major. They show up and they play pretty strong at the tournaments. And M&M themselves are also a very strong, or at least in terms of consistency, a strong EU team. And they are they're coming in this with a roster change where they drop Neo for Nafe, who I think a lot of people consider an upgrade. And we have Direwolves, who are coming into this tournament where they have lost Reaps, who I think most people thought was their best player. He had a really impressive major debut at the last tournament. And I think they brought back somebody like Harambe or somebody is back on the team. And they won the qualifier in APAC to qualify. So they're like an unknown, I guess. I don't know what the expectation is for them. They did win 2 games at the last major that they played at, obviously with Reaps. They beat, and these were best of ones, of course, but they did manage to beat Mirage and they beat FaZe in best of ones. So that, that's pretty impressive. What is your initial read on Group B?
I think this group is the most top-heavy group by far. So I'll just start with Direwolves at 5. I don't think them look like they won without Reaps in their own region, but internationally you need the Reaps firepower. Um, I mean, you're just not going to compete with Liquid or Sonics when you don't have like your guy that's dropping 15, 16. I'm not quite sure what the issues were, but you just like fact of the matter is I don't think they can compete. So they're my clear 5. Eminem 4. I've never been sold on Eminem. I think their Eminem stands for mid and mid. So I think the Nath upgrade has to be like something they know that we don't. That's just got to be like a regional thing because if you look at the stats, Nath is minus 20 through the last 2 stages and like has never been like a blow you away kind of player on Navi. So they got to have some like rank chemistry or just
Do
something
you
with
think
him
it's
because
a situation where they just felt like Neo was literally just such a liability for them that just even a more experienced player would be better for SI?
yeah, because if you think about it, like Neo has played at a bunch of events, but yeah, he was very lacking. Like he just never took over. He was cutting away like the worst player on the team. I mean, despite having Neo, they still almost made every event. They made 2 SIs, so like it's not like they were bad with him, but they were never ever going to win. Like you're just never going to win with that. But I don't think they're going to win with Nath either or Nathan. Um, I just I I feel like for an event like this, you kind of had to go big and you had to grab someone that can then win you the whole tournament. I don't think Nath is that guy. I don't think he's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Wolves have never sold me either, especially in best of threes. Wolves are kind of the same. Wolves are kind of like Rogue when they had Rips. Like that's how I feel about Rise. Now people obviously say Rise is their shot caller, this and that, but like at the end of the day, like the guy's firepower isn't there. Like he's put up 0 and 10 games. He's had horrible performances. Like they're good, and Rise is a good player. But when you're a team like Wolves, who's at the top, you're trying to do anything you can to go from like that 9 out of 10 to like that 9.5 out of 10. And I don't think they're at that 9.5 level right now with a guy like Rise. There were rumors that they wanted Blaz. Um, I think
I heard that too.
I actually think someone like Blaz for Rise could have been the move, and I understand why they didn't do it because a move like that could either literally help you win the event or help you get grouped. Like it's kind of a shot in the dark, but it's the move that I think they needed to make because I just don't think they're going to make a deep run. I don't think they have the firepower.
Hmm.
And then unlike most groups where like the 5 seed is kind of the toss up, I think the 1 seed is the toss up here. Like I can see Sonics taking it, I can see Liquid taking it, but I think Liquid's going to take it just because I think they'll have more. I don't know. I think whoever wins between Sonics and Liquid will take it. Like that's how I see it. I think they'll
And
kind of.
that's the first game. They play each other right off the bat, too. So they have no time to, like, kind of get their bearings a little bit. So that'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
So I think okay. So I'm just going to say off that Liquid wins because that's the Sonics' first game with a new player. Um, I think it'll be close, but despite Liquid winning, I actually think no matter how good or how bad Liquid wins by, whether they win 7-0, 7-0, or 8-7, 8-7, 8-7, I think Sonics will just win out the rest of the group and get second. So I'm going to put Sonics 2, and I'm going to put Liquid 1, but 1 and 2 I think will be a closer fight than 5 and 4.
Yeah, looking at this group, I'm not gonna predict it just because Sonics are in it. But I thought there's a few interesting things. This is the third international tournament where Sonics and Eminem are playing each other. Played each other at the last SI. Sonics won 2-0, obviously different teams. They played each other at the last major. Sonics won. That was the best of. It was actually a 1-1. They lost Chalet and then they won the rematch on Oregon. Obviously, again, different teams. So there is a lot of familiarity there with Eminem and Sonics. I also think this is interesting that Sonics and Liquid are playing because this is the first time they're playing. And over the past 2 years, Grixer and Palu are like kind of by far the 2 highest rated players in the world. So, cover your ears, Shaiko fans, but this might be a matchup of potentially the 2 best players in the world playing each other for the first time, which is kind of interesting. I also think like in a group stage, if you're a team like Sonics or you're a team like Liquid or your team like Wolves or even Eminem in this group, you're probably expecting it to make it out of this group. If you're Liquid, Sonics, or Wolves, maybe you're even expecting to make it to winner's bracket. So I think there is a bit of gamesmanship where it's like, what do you want to show in a group stage match? Like, for your prediction where you said Sonics and Liquid and you think it's like kind of a toss-up for first place, if you're Sonics or you Liquid, are you throwing everything out there in a group stage match on the first day to win that match? Or are you trying to hide stuff or potentially not use everything that you might want to use later in the tournament if you're assuming that you're going to get out of groups anyway? I think that comes into play there because it's so early. Like, it's literally day 1 of the tournament. You don't know, like, maybe there are maps you don't want to show yet. Maybe you have, like, some one-off kind of rushes, shit like that. Like, when it's teams that consider, like, I think you would say Sonics, Liquid, and Wolves all expect themselves to make deep runs in SI. They do have to think about what they're willing to show in a group stage. For a team like Eminem, where I do think they are a good team and they're a consistent team, they've never made it out of a group stage at a major. So for them, or SI. So for them, I think it's more important just to get the momentum of making it SI. So maybe they're going to let everything fly. But these other teams, regardless of what you said about Wolves, yes, the Wolves have not won a best of 3 this year. They got 2-0'd by BDS and Jönköping. They got 2-0'd by Exet at Berlin. I mean, they even got 2-0'd by Eminem in the EU finals. So there's definitely some worry about Wolves in a best of 3. But I still think they have a good team. They clearly have like really good roster, so I think they'll be fine. Nothing against Direwolves, but I do think they're the clear. If Direwolves didn't get last in this group, it'd be surprising just from the fact that, like you said, they did basically lose who I think people would consider as their best player. And they replaced him with an old player on the team who that team was not. I think that team got smoked internationally with the roster when he was playing Harambe. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. The other thing that I think is interesting here is, remember, Liquid lost in the Jönköping major finals 3-2 to Liquid, and Sonics lost in the semifinals 2-1 to Liquid. So these are the 2 teams who lost to BDS. So these are 2 teams who were eliminated by BDS at the last major. This is 2 of the top 4 teams at the last major in the same group. And Wolves also, I think, were top 8. So it's a really talented group for sure. I think, like you said, this is maybe not as even across the board, but it's super top heavy because, like, if you told me and if you told me Liquid, Sonics, Wolves won SI, it wouldn't like shock me. Like they're these level of teams in this group, in my opinion. And so going on to Group 3C, which I think is very interesting group. I think that's clearly who's gonna. Actually, I don't even know. We have Astralis, Cyclops, Team One or Los +1, I guess now. OXG and BDS. What are you thinking on this group?
So again, I'm gonna revert back to how I did Group 1 or Group A. I think Group A and Group C are the same. They have a clear-cut team. Although OXG did beat BDS at Charlotte, I think BDS has improved. I also think OXG has also kind of this will be a statement event for them. I don't really know if they've improved or regressed from where they were with Laxing, but I'm going to give BDS the 1 seed for sure. Very confident in BDS. I think with Licky Fact, like he was what they needed. I've been saying it for a while.
They've won so obviously haven't been necessarily all majors, but in 2022, BDS, they won Gamers 8. They won the Japan Invitational, which is like whatever, I guess you'd say. They won Yonkoping, and then they won the EU Finals. So they're on a streak of winning. The last 4 tournaments that they've played in, they've won.
With Licky Fact. They have not lost with Licky Fact, the king.
Yeah.
I think there's too much firepower on BDS to really contest them. So I'm going to give them 1. Now I'm going to flip-flop and go bottom up. So I'm gonna be an NA hater here, but I'm a realist. And
I have a hot take. I think maybe it's a hot take.
I think Astralis gets last. I love the guys on Astralis. Like I love Call Out. I think those guys have a really good work ethic. I think they're dogs. I think they're a good group of guys. But I think Spiff was probably the worst player they could have picked up. Maybe they see something in him that I don't. I have never thought he was good, and I'll go on the record to say that maybe they win SI and he proves me wrong. But Spiff is definitely on fraud watch, and it's interesting to pick someone up like that before SI because that will be his first ever tier 1 level game, and it's in the biggest game of all their lives because none of them have ever played in SI except Shuttle. So I think Astralis gets last place. I'm not sold on them. I know they'll be prepared. I know they'll be ready. I know they'll have some plays up their sleeves, but like I just don't think that Spiff has the firepower. Spiff does whiff. I think he got overhyped because he played against Poison in T3 leagues. And I saw
something that Spiff had a 0.96 rating in SES,
which is
like over 2 different SESs. So not even all on Astralis. Like the combined, he had a 0.9 rating in a T3 league, which is kind of concerning for an SI player.
Yeah, and you know this, I know this. A lot of the fans obviously don't know this, but like playing pro siege against some of these people, it's hard. Like it's hard. You do not get away with missing a first shot against someone like Poison.
Yeah, I mean, there's way different level. Like look at Asian. Asian was thought of as like Spiff's like idol, right? Like they were on the same team together. Asian's thought of as like a T3 prodigy, like the next GOAT or whatever. Comes up to Pro League. Honestly, looked a little bit overmatched. Only lasted 1 stage. Got dropped. If you can even look at pro players, there are levels to everything. Like you could be a bottom tier pro player, a mid tier pro player, a major level pro player. And then when you go to the majors or the international tournaments, you see even bigger differences where some guys who are really good regionally, they struggle a little bit internationally. They don't do as well. Some people elevate their play internationally. So like there's levels to everything, and you kind of by playing have to figure out what level you're on and where to improve. And we're taking Spiff from a T3 level and throwing him at literally the highest T1 level. This is SI. These are all the best players in the world, basically. You're throwing him against that without even seeing if he can even hang in bottom tier T1 first. I think that's definitely a huge concern.
And I'm not telling how the Astralis guys how to do their job now, but I'm telling you right now, if I was Call Out or whoever the shot caller on Astralis is, I'm telling you right now, roster lock January 5th, and on January 4th after seeing, because they lost to OXG before that, I believe the OXG
they got
results
slant, and obviously it's hard to know how hard they were trying to win that because it is SES, but Astralis and OXG played a best of 3 in SES, and OXG like annihilate. Like it was not close.
It was maybe the most non-competitive games of Siege I've ever watched. It was 7-2, 7-1. And you don't go into games not trying. Like Astralis is trying.
You're
And
trying
I'm
to win. It's just it remains to be seen. Like, what are you showing to win? But the
yeah,
fact that you're trying to win against a fellow SI team
in your
and
group.
you get like manhandled like that, it's definitely they got 7-1, 7-2. So they won 3 rounds in 2 maps. That's obviously concerning.
That's a huge red flag. And like a little bit of a sidetrack here, but like I said, the biggest tournament of the year. If I'm Astralis, if I'm call out or the GM of Astralis after that game, that OXG, I'm calling up Hyper and I'm calling up Kansan and I'm bringing them on board for Shuttle and Spiff right then and there. So you got to have a deep level of faith in this kid to really not sell your spot, because invite the next year is never guaranteed. Look at TSM. So this could be their first. This is their first invite. This could be their last invite. So as a friend to some of these players, as a relative fan of like Astralis, like I like to see them do well. I don't necessarily like to see a lot of the NA teams do well. I like to see them do well. I'm concerned, and with the practice I've been hearing them have, the results of practices, the results of games, me knowing Spiff, watching him play and think that he's just not good at all. Like I think they're clear cut 5th. The only reason they won't get 5th and the way they'll get out of 5th is if Cyclops somehow doesn't get 5th or fumbles it, as they usually do. Cyclops always find a way to get 5th. But I think this is the event where they don't get last, where they don't get grouped.
They finally made a roster change too coming into this.
Yeah, they got rid of Gatorade, yeah. And they got another APAC player. But to me, all these APAC players, like I don't know, and like same with Sandbox, like they pick up a new APAC player from a lower tier team. To me, it means nothing. It could be
they're gonna play. I think they're gonna play the same, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They just have a different player.
Yeah, so like to me, it means nothing. Like I don't, I don't understand the skill level of these players like I would. Like OXG picking up Sweater, you pick up a player like that from mid tier. An A team, you understand like who Sweater is. Like I understand who Sweater is. Like when they pick up, when they drop Gatorade for Arculi, I believe his name, or however you say it, Arculi. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's the same team, but I think they'll get 4th. I think Team 1 will get 3rd. I think OXG will get 2nd. But again, this is a big tournament for Vert and Sweater. Sweater's first ever international tournament. Sweater does have LAN experience, and Sweater has had like compared to Spiff, like who's neither of them played international. Sure, Sweater has gone on NAL stages and dropped 20 kills against SSG and stuff. So like he's not too much of a worry like Spiff. Like you understand what Sweater can bring. The big question here is Vert. If I'm actually looking at me and you Discord DMs, and I sent you a screenshot. I said, guess who? And I remember this is Vert's stats. Vert is minus 58 in the last 6 months of competitive season. So in 18 maps, he's minus 58. That's almost -4 a map. Now, I don't know if it's because Newer's just hogging all the kills, but to go -3, -4 a map on his role is hard. So I think this is a big event for Vert. I think if Vert steps up, OXG has like the firepower to win. Like a lot of teams can't say that, but I think they can win if Vert steps up. But I definitely think they can just as easily lose if he doesn't step up, because you can't count on Newers to go +80 every event, every tournament, because he did go +80 in SCS, and I don't know how Vert did. I don't think he did anything substantial in comparison to Newers, but like you can't rely on someone like that to just go off every game. But I do think OXG has kind of the rogue ceiling. They can touch the stars, or they can be first one out in a way. But definitely Astralis 5th.
Yeah, this is a group to me that's pretty interesting. And by the way, I looked up while you were talking. So in Tier 1 international tournament, so this would be the majors and SI this past year, Vert is -39. So he's maybe one of those players I was talking about when you say somebody who is traditionally really good regionally, but kind of struggles maybe a little bit internationally. That being said, in my opinion, just based off of like Sonic scrims, I think OXG are the best NA team that we've scrimmed. I think they look the best out of all the other NA teams. That, it is scrims. It does, might not matter at all. But I thought that was worth saying. I do think BDS are the clear-cut favorite for this group. Like I said earlier, I mean, they have won 4 tournaments in a row. They're coming off a major victory. Shaiko is maybe playing the best Siege that he's played of his career. Liquefac has given them some more firepower. I don't think you could really argue anything there. And I think OXG are locked. Like, I think OXG are locked in for top 2 in this group. I think BDS and OXG are top 2. the bottom three here is like up in the air for me. Because Cyclops, they're like by far the most experienced of these other three teams. They're maybe one of the most experienced teams in the world. Like they never wins a lot. Like I feel like they're at every single tournament. But like you said, they don't make it out. Like they just never can make it out. Is they made a roster change here? Is this the time they can make it out? Then with Team One have never played an international tournament. This is a completely different roster for them. They came through the SI LATAM quals and they beat Furia 2-1 in the final to make it. But all of these guys on Team 1 or Los plus 1, they're also inexperienced. I mean, Loban is on Team 1. I don't know if you remember him, but he was playing NA FPL. He was on a team with Jolton and now he's playing at SI. So it's kind of hard for me to predict them because they've never played internationally. I don't think, this could be a lot of pressure for them. It's a new experience, and that always is a red flag to me, especially at SI, the factor of never having played internationally before.
I think 3 of them did play at Charlotte. I know they got to Charlotte.
Did they?
Yeah, they got to top 8 because that's when 3 of them.
Oh yeah, you are right because
that's when they had the cutouts of the players who were in Mexico.
I was thinking this was like when Laguna, like that whole team broke up. You're right. So they do have players who have played at international tournaments because I was thinking it was like when Lagunas they squad wiped the team with them. But yeah, so I guess they have some international experience, but a couple players who maybe don't. Loban being one of them. And then Astralis, I do agree with you. The Spiff pickup, maybe we're going to all be made to look like idiots, but I just have not, I just haven't seen anything from Spiff of why they picked him up. Like, yeah. I don't even think that he's better, just from a DP Fire versus Spiff, 1v1, I feel like DP Fire is just better than he is. I don't, and again, I won't say that I've it's not like I ever tried out Spiff or anything, but I just don't see what they see in him.
I don't see it.
I do think they've been struggling a lot, and he's not the only one. I feel like their whole team since they've picked up Spiff has just been off. Because even in NAL Stage 3, where you want to say, Astralis was on a downturn. Remember, if they would have beat OXG in that last game, they would have made the major again. So they were only one game off making the major all 3 stages, and they just lost the last game. But since that roster change, I feel like they're just and again, we haven't seen them in official tier 1 matches, but I don't think any of them have been J9 seems like he's been playing good, but Iconic has not been playing well. I think Iconic, if you look up the SES stats, was he had some insane, hold on, my thing just, okay, there we go. He had he was -30. One of the games I saw a screenshot, he was 1-12 or something.
Yeah, against Parabellum.
And this is in a T3 league, and they're playing Parabellum, who are, no offense to them, but they were ass. They just replaced their whole team. So Astralis is a big concern for me. At the same time, I think if I'm looking at Team 1, Astralis and Cyclops, Astralis have the highest potential. We've seen them literally get second at a major. They do have really good players. I think Forrest, Iconic, J9, even Shuttle when he's playing well. Those are guys who can be top level players, even if they're not necessarily playing like it. So I don't want to pick Astralis last, but they're a team where I can't pick them higher than 4th. They're going to be 4th or 5th in that group. And unless Spiff just goes nuclear, he's the X factor. If Spiff shows up and he's playing well, I think they could do well, maybe get 3rd. I don't think they can get 2nd. They're not going to get 1st. If Spiff is playing like what we've seen from him in these T3 leagues,
they're fucked.
They're going to be in trouble. I honestly don't know how I would say this. I guess I think Los plus 1 are going to get 3rd, and then it's between Cyclops and Astralis for 4th, 5th. I don't. Again, I think those 3 could go any way. I think the top 2 in this group are for sure BDS and OXG, and I think the bottom 3, literally no result would surprise me. If Astralis got 3rd, it wouldn't surprise me. If Astralis got last, it wouldn't surprise me. I think that's a tough call. And then going into Group D, I think this is an interesting group outside of maybe one team. So we have DZ, FaZe, Heroic, Matey or M80, and Team Secret. What do you think here?
This is kind of like Group A to me. There's no like clear group for last place. DZ, I'm not a fan of like their roster change. Like I think Hyper is infinitely better than Gaveni.
But Hyper just didn't want to play on DZ anymore, basically, right? Like
Yeah,
that was so they
I
didn't really have a choice there.
I just had a crazy ad pop up on Wikipedia, made me lose my train of thought. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Gaveni pickup. I don't think he's bad, but he's definitely better than Spiff, right? But it's very risky to pick a rookie up in the offseason. They didn't play SCS. Like these guys have played no games.
Yeah.
So their first official game as a team is gonna be with Gaveni, and it's gonna be against whoever they play first. I don't know who they play first, but it's gonna be against either FaZe, Heroic, Matey, or Secret. Despite that, they're still Dark Zero. They're kind of like G2. They'll always make it out in my eyes.
Canadian, I will say, has a history where even if his team doesn't do as well regionally, like even look at the major they won,
Yeah,
Canadian teams do perform better internationally. I think that's because NA teams have a better understanding about how like Troy's teams kind of operate than international teams. So I do think that that's a factor. Like I do think they will be better internationally than we've seen regionally because of Troy.
I'm gonna go. God, this is a
And
hard
then
group.
FaZe, remember they've also replaced.
They have a new player.
This is like a roster change kind of group because they replaced Cameraman, who statistically was lacking. He wasn't playing that well, and they picked up Vita King, who I believe is like a T2 player. I don't think either of us know really much about him. But from what we understand, Cameraman is kind of the reason FaZe play the way they do. Like that's his style. Him and I would say Astro. So I think that remains to be seen how much that actually matters. Like, is it just going to be like, hey, we have somebody who has more fragging potential, so we're better now? Or is it going to be without Cameraman making because Cameraman kind of reminds me of Geo in a way where he makes big plays a lot of like at big moments kind of thing, but he's not necessarily always going crazy on the stat pad, but he's just like
He'll win you rounds.
He'll win you rounds, and I don't think he's necessarily ever losing you any rounds. It's just kind of what you're getting there. So I guess they're kind of more hit or miss, and then Heroic also have roster changes. I think something happened. If I understand this correctly, something happened with one of their pickups, and so Sloth is playing now. I think one of them couldn't get a visa or something. So Sloth is coming back, and then they also picked up Noodle, who was like playing in MXPL for Benja, and Benja was arguably Joom is really good. Benja's probably their second best player. So Heroic it's a strange team to me. What are you thinking?
I think Heroic gets last. But not like an easy last place clear cut. I just think I think Uno, like despite he played well at the last major, big deal. They didn't make it out of
Well, he did also go. What did he go? And
he
didn't get a
17
kill in the EUL finals.
In a best of 3 against another invite team. I mean, is that not like concerning as a coach? Like that your player goes it's gonna happen. You're gonna have a bad map, but to have two back to back, like that's concerning. That is reason for me to give them last place. Like I don't care. I was going I think Uno is Finnish. I had a bunch of Finnish people roasting me. Oh, Uno's better than you. Uno. You're not talking about me here. I'm talking about he's going to be playing against Asher. He's going to be playing against DZ. He's going to be playing against M80, who is notorious. Like you better hit your first shot kind of players, or else someone like DS or Kino is going to shit on you. Or Team Secret, like Heroic, I don't think they have the firepower. Noodles never played at a T1 major, as far as I know. Sloth's really good. He was the best player in EUL Stage 1 statistically, or around the best player. So I think he's fine. Joom is a beast. Joom is like, if we judge off last event, like there was a game where they were playing, I can't remember who, Liquid, TSM, someone in the group, and Joom started off the game 12-0 in 3 or 4 rounds. Like just
they didn't play that many games because they got grouped, but Joom was the highest rated player at the last event.
Yeah, like Joom is something special, but I think Heroic, no matter what, gets 5th. I'm gonna give Secret fourth.
Mhm.
I think Secret does have open qual momentum, and they did look really good in the qual. They
They
did
did
look
look
really good.
strong, but it's like, what is their competition? We have the
Yeah.
old Empire team where they haven't played in a while, and to be honest, I think they their map pool was just horrendous, so they were never gonna win that. Like they could play 2 maps basically. That was just never gonna work out for them.
Yeah. So Secret, they do have some firepower, but I don't think they have like world class firepower. But
They
it
got
is
Slevin,
also
super power player.
yeah, Slebin finally made it after being on that team for a while. It is a lot of I think Kendra's the only one with experience.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting. But I'm not counting them out. I still think they can I still think they'll be better than Heroic. I think they're more top to bottom complete.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna give M80 third just because I haven't seen them play in so long. Like they haven't done anything.
So
They
I have a
haven't.
question for you because I kind of have my own opinion on this. So M80 we're boot camping in LATAM,
Yeah.
right? And my question there is normally coming into an international event, your advantage is versus other regions. They don't know how you play, and you don't know how they play. So you kind of, or you don't know how they play. So it's kind of like it's just a matchup of who plays like what works, right? M80 kind of already play more LATAM style. Obviously, their coach is LATAM. A lot of their players are LATAM influenced at least. So they go to boot camp in LATAM. So they're showing all the LATAM teams how they play. But for the NA teams, all the NA teams already know how they play. So they've now given 2 different regions an idea on how they play. So like if they're playing FaZe, for instance, FaZe probably was scrimming them. They know what to expect. If they're playing Dark Zero knows what to expect. Do you think that was smart to boot camp in LATAM? Or do you think that was maybe a little bit of a troll from them?
I think it was very advantageous of them to boot camp. At the end of the day, they have like out of any team in this group, I think they have the most free flowing play style. Like they can kind of play however they need to play. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they're the kind of team where if they're getting shit on, they'll throw everything out the window and just play crazy. So I think they did it more so for themselves rather than other teams. And I think they knew that was a contingency of going to Brazil to boot camp. But at the end of the day, like I think, because they were playing, I know some of their players were playing Latin FPL. I feel like they could have benefited a lot from it just to see how other people play, and things along those lines. But I think M80 they just haven't played in so long. I don't even know what to think, and I'm in NA. Like I just don't know
Right.
what to expect. I've never seen them play with Solus or since Solus came out. Like you just have
That's
no
true.
idea. You have no idea. And same for DZ. Like DZ hasn't played an official game. So really either of them are they're like nobody knows. They're not like a Charlotte or actually that played SCS. Like you just don't know what to expect from either of these teams, but I still think they're better than Heroic and Secret. I'm gonna give DC second, M80 third, and Phase One, even with Vita King. Like I can't imagine that Vita King is like any less fragging power than Cameraman. So I'm just gonna say that even if FaZe does regress, they'll still be very good. It's like Liquid with Lagonis. Like you don't really know what to expect, but like you just know that they're so good they really can't get worse. Like FaZe felt they needed to make a roster change after getting top 8 in a major. Like that was their X factor. Like okay, these guys are good. So I think I'm gonna
Yeah.
give them the one. I'm gonna give DZ two just because DZ always shows up internationally. M83, Secret 4, and Heroic 5. But that's a good group. It's like Group A. Like there's just a lot of good teams.
Yeah, so looking at this group, I do agree with you. I think Heroic, I feel like they're just going to be last. Bringing in Sloth, who I actually think is a good player, is just, if they're bringing him in because somebody couldn't play, I feel like that's just going to be awkward because, like, Sloth isn't really supposed to be on the team. He's just like, he
The
was on the
sub.
bench. And then, Noodle, no offense to Noodle, but he played in MXPL, and it's not like he was going like crazy. And he's replacing Benja, who has been their best player all year. And then stage 3, I think June was better than him, but like he's a very good player in EU. I don't think Noodle is as good as Benja. I mean, maybe we'll be surprised. So I just think Heroic are not as good. And I do agree with Secret. Secret are kind of the opposite, where they've obviously just been complete ass all year in EU, but they do seemingly come into this on a bit of a hot streak. They did look good in the EU quals. Now, obviously, EU had so many teams already qualified. You could say like, how good is like Navi or Bakers or former Empire? Like, that's a remains to be seen. But I think they've done enough where I comfortably can say I think they get fourth. And then the top three here is interesting to me because we have roster changes on DZ. Gavini's never played internationally. Gavini's never even played on LAN. You know, he's like I've seen DZ doing like the little scrims at LAN, but that's not the same. You're playing on your own setup and everything. So Gavini's gonna have to deal with that. Playing internationally, playing on LAN for the first time, playing office setup, like just there's a whole bunch of factors that go into that. And then you have FaZe, kind of same thing. They're bringing in Invited King, who I believe is also not experienced internationally, maybe not experienced LAN. But the other four guys on that team are so experienced. I don't, you know, he at the very least probably brings more fragging power. And then M80 haven't changed anybody. They've been boot camping. We haven't really seen them in a long time because they didn't do stage 3. So in theory, they've prepared a lot for this. So I think it's kind of up in the air for the top 3. Just based off of what history says, I feel like I go FaZe 1, DZ 2, M80 3, but I think you could convince me of any order among those 3. Like if DZ won the group and FaZe got third, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
If M80 won the group, I think the one that would surprise me is if M80 won the group. I would say I think M80 are better for second or third, and I would think DZ or FaZe could get first or second, basically is how I would put it. I that would be impressive to me if M80 win the group, but yeah, I think we're pretty much aligned. I think besides Group A on who's not going to make it out. I think overall we said, I know for Group A you said Koi wasn't going to make it out. I said G2, although I also think it could be Elevate there. Group B, I think we both said Direwolves. Group C, I think we were both between Cyclops and Astralis, basically. I know you were leaning more towards Astralis. And then Group D, we both said Heroic. So we've kind of picked our groups. And obviously, we don't know how the brackets work, so we're not going to go through all of that. But who would you say, like, going into this, if brackets work out perfectly and it's just the 4 best teams in your opinion, who are your top 4 teams at the event, in your opinion, right now?
So I'm gonna go Latam heavy here. I'm gonna say W7M and Team Liquid for sure, and then BDS and Sonics. I think all those teams have what I think is the most complete rosters. Like I don't see a weak spot in either roster. The only reason I don't think the reason I'm not putting Sonics at Liquid or W7M level is just because they have a new player. So it's like you don't know what could happen. It's safe for me. It's just safer to pick a Liquid or W7M or BDS. They've had the same roster for months now. So those are my top 4. I think at the end of the day, I think finally, this is like picking Kentucky in March Madness. Like they have all the star power. They have their De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk super team, bam, and then all of a sudden they never win. But I'm gonna pick Liquid. I think Liquid finally wins. Knowing how it's reality and Siege often work, Liquid will probably lose. But I think Liquid finally wins. I think BDS and Liquid have a rematch. I think W7M Sonics are the top 4, make it in top 4. And then I think the dark horses are definitely like M80, DZ. They definitely can do it, OXG. But those are my top 4 right now for sure.
Yeah, so I'm not going to predict Sonics here. So basically all these predictions are just not Sonics because obviously I'm biased. I want Sonics to win. Assuming Sonics are just like non-existent, I think BDS is obviously a top 4 threat. I think W7M are top 4 threat, although I do have concerns about them in best of 3s. I think Liquid are a top 4 threat for sure. I actually think OXG are a top 4 threat, and I think FaZe are a top 4 threat. So I guess you could say, if I'm saying like top 6, maybe I would go. And this is assuming like brackets work out perfectly. So it doesn't always play out that way. But like W7M, Liquid, OXG, BDS, and again, I'm not counting Sonics at all here. FaZe and like maybe DZ or M80 if Sonics don't exist. For my sleeper teams, and you can make this prediction too, I think OXG is a sleeper. I don't think many people are talking about them because they kind of haven't played in such a while. But they finished off NAL Stage 3 hot. In my opinion, they've looked pretty good in scrims. I think they're a sleeper. I think SSG are a sleeper. I don't know how much, like, SSG are like the 100 to 1 odd team that you just like, you think, like, you could imagine out of 100 SIs a scenario where SSG win one or two, like they win a couple of them, so you throw like $10 on them or something. Like, I think SSG could be a sleeper there. I don't think anybody really talks about them. I think Koi could be a sleeper simply because we've seen what they're capable of doing when everything is clicking. They can win the tournament or they could bomb out. And I think M80 and Dark Zero are sleepers just because we haven't seen M80 in so long. We haven't seen Dark Zero in so long. Canadian at SI usually performs pretty well. I think last year DZ got top 8. But yeah, I think my number one sleeper would be OXG because I don't think people are talking about them. And I do think they have a really strong roster. I think it's honestly going to... And remember, this is Dream, Newer's first... No. Yeah, this is Newer's first time at SI, I think. I don't think he played at less SI. So I do think it does come down a lot to how Vert and Sweater do.
They have 3 first-time SI players. They have Sweater, New,
Sweater's never played internationally at all. Remember, he's only played NA. So that's a question mark. But if Sweater and Vert can perform how we think they can, I think OXG have a potential to make a deep run here. What are you thinking in terms of like who are your super underdog? They can make maybe not win the tournament, but like honestly, it'd be kind of like Sonics last year, where all of a sudden people are like, "Wait a minute, can Sonics win the event?" kind of thing. Like, who could do that for you here?
I want to say OXG because they're kind of like rogue. Like if the things click, if Vert performs, like if Sweater performs, they can do it. But I don't know if either of them or both. You need both of them to perform. Realistically, to win the big tournament, you need both to perform. But I don't think we'll get both of them performing. Despite that, I still think they're a sleeper team. But my number one sleeper team to win it all is going to be M80. Just because again they've come close. They're consistently making it out of groups when they make it to majors.
Yeah.
So that's a really good sign, and they do play well. Like within their group stages, they always play well. They usually have a hard group, like when they had Furia, and Liquid in their group, and they made it out. And in Berlin, they had Nip and Rogue and Damn One. Like that's a good group, and they made it out. They got first easily. So it's like they can win. The big player there for them is going to be Gomez, who's been struggling all year. Despite like stats, he does bring a lot to the team from player testimony. So I'm going to take their word on it. And the results speak for itself. I just think that like if they really want to win, you just can't count on your smoke player Kino starting off a game 12-0 like all the time. You can't count on Yaga dropping 15 to 20. Like I think Gomez is going to have a step up tournament, and if he does, they can definitely win. So M80 is my
if Gomez played poorly here, do you think there's a risk that he is replaced before NAL starts?
M80 is weird because they're like a different dynamic than a lot of teams. Like they're just, especially because I mean the rumors of like Alamau and stuff, like I've heard multiple rumors about that, but every time like knowing their players, like I just know that's not true. And obviously, you know, and I know that like Yaga is like their best. I think Yaga's their best player. Yaga or DS. Like I don't think Yaga would ever get dropped. But I think if Gomez plays bad, there is question like who would they pick up? There are definitely good free agents. Like you could get someone like Kansan, or you could get like a Hyper. Like I know Hyper is close with some of them. Like this is just speculation. I could be talking out of my ass. But like I think if Gomez doesn't perform, there is like reason to question. Like maybe Hyper goes to M80. Maybe I mean, you just never know, but I do think that Gomez does need to play well this tournament because they how often can you come so close and really say we'll get it next time before you need to make a change?
Yeah, I think they're an interesting choice. I don't think I have as much faith in them. Are there any? I know you've kind of just mentioned Gomez, but are there any other players? And this is kind of the last thing I think we really need to talk about. What players are like your player to keep an eye on? Like, is there anybody who you think is being underrated going into this? Is there anybody who's like, I guess you'd say an X factor? Like, what are you seeing here in terms of the players that you think fans should pay attention to because it might tell a story about how their team is going to fare based off their play.
I think fans really need to take a look at Rampy. I think if Rampy and Fultz as well, they just haven't been playing like themselves. Like again, they've been playing good.
Rampy actually play. I will say for Rampy, he actually played really well in the NAL qualifiers. I think he was the highest rated player. So he did kind of turn it around there a little bit.
These are players that like they don't need to be they need to be more than good. So like Fultz and Rampy, if they can really pop off, like SSG's a threat. Those are who I'd watch in that group. Group C, I personally am excited to watch Spiff because as a hater, I had an Charlotte Shroud. I got cut after the first round. I don't care. I'll say it. Like I still think I'm a better player than Spiff. Like I as someone who I still consider myself like I'm a realist. Like I'm not saying I'm even a pro level player anymore. Like I'm not attempting to play pro. I still think I'm better than Spiff. So I want to see him play because I know a lot of people were hyping him up because he can play against Poison. So that's who I want to watch in that group. Sweater for OXG because obviously I teamed with Sweater. I think he's very, very good. I don't think people realize how good he is, but he needs to show that to the world, not just to NAL, because Sweater showed up to an NAL game with cat ears and a collar on, and he had 21 kills. Like that's not easy to do. But I think he's the one to watch for that group. Group D, Gomez is to watch for Fraud Watch, and then Heroic June because June could really prove that he's like that X Factor world class player this event. And then for Group B, I think it's not so players, like more so just to watch the whole teams. Like now we see a full complete Team Liquid, we see a full complete Sonics. Again, I guess Group B to watch is Rise because if Rise underperforms, it shows that like Wolves made a mistake by not moving on from him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've kind of already talked about it. I think for me, the players to watch that are going to give you an idea about how their team would fare are Vert and Sweater on OXG, because I do think OXG have the potential to make a deep run. And I think we all know what to expect from, like, I don't think any of us have any questions about about like Fox or Dream or Newers. I think they're going to play fine. I think it's just a question mark on Sweater at his first international event and just Vert being consistent. So I think they're, for me, players to watch. I think if Heroic are not going to get grouped, Joom is going to continue to have like a huge performance. I don't think that Heroic can go very far, to be honest. But I think if Joom does like a LeBron performance, he can at least get them out of group. I think a lot of fans will have their eye on Citizen. Just because he's joining a new team. He's a very popular player. Citizen, over the past year, is the number 4 rated international player in the world, and he's joining a team with Grixer, who is the number 1 rated international player in the world. So obviously there's going to be a lot of eyes on him just to see how he fits in with the Sonics dynamic. I think also with Nafe on M&M replacing Neo. Like you said, maybe as NA people, we're not as familiar with Nafe, but I think from what I've heard, EU does think Nafe is like a pretty good player, and in theory should be an upgrade from Neo. So maybe that puts M&M at a level we're not expecting. I think Koi as an entire team is just kind of like a watch. Like I feel like everybody on Koi could be like a really exciting player. But there's just inconsistencies there. Obviously, with Bolo retiring, Spoit might be the new like face of the game, essentially. Like I'm sure Ubisoft wants Koi to do well because they want Spoit to make like a deep run in the tournament. He's kind of taking on that content creator player mantle. Elevate, if they're going to do well, it's going to be on Onigiri. Remember last SI, Onigiri broke the kill record. He was going like in sicko mode. If that's going to happen again, I think it's going to be on him. Like you said, Rampy, Fultz. To be honest, Yeti has not performed that well internationally. Like if we look at the last major he played in compared to how he played in NA, he didn't do that well on Sonics. He never did too great internationally. So I think all 3 of them are people to watch. I have faith in like Bosco performing, obviously. On Dark Zero, it's Gavini for me. I have faith. The other 4 guys on DZ, we've seen enough internationally now to where I think we know what to expect. Gavini, we haven't seen anything from him. Same with FaZe. We haven't seen anything from Vita King. He has big shoes to fill with Cameraman. FaZe are always thought of as like a front runner when these tournaments. So if they kind of bomb out, it's going to be him to blame. I don't know about you, but I've also heard rumors about Vita King. I think I saw this on Reddit maybe about Vita King is only playing this tournament, and then supposedly Keys from W7M might be going to FaZe. That's something I've heard. I don't know if that's true. It's a Reddit rumor. But if this guy's only knows he's only playing this tournament for one tournament, like how does that affect your mental kind of thing? And G2, Benja on a new team, a more star power frag heavy team replacing Citizen. How is he going to do? On Heroic, I think he got a lot of kills, in part because simply there are people on Heroic don't get a lot of kills. Now he's on a team where they play way differently than Heroic. A lot of the players on G2 obviously have frag potential. He's got big shoes to fill with Citizen. How's that going to work out for him? The list goes on. I think every team have question marks, and if certain people pop off, it changes the entire event. Like you said, if Rampy and Fultz are going crazy, like, old SI, maybe this is one of those multiverses where SSG win SI. Like, anything can happen at these tournaments. But yeah, on that, do you have any kind of closing thoughts on the tournament or anything to say in general?
No, I'm excited. I think this is a top to bottom, a very solid tournament. Like, I think for the most part, anybody can win. As an NA player or resident, I do hope NA does do well because this is a big moment for NA. So I do hope all the NA teams show up. Like, deep down, I do hope they show up. I hope Astralis finds a way to do well without Spiff doing well, just so I can be right at the end. But yeah, that's pretty much my closing thoughts.
Are you praying on anybody's downfall at this event?
I am praying on Spiff's downfall. Again, nothing against Spiff, but like I just like to be proven right, and more times than not, when it comes to a player and their skill, I tend to be right.
If I put a gun to your head and I told you to tell me who's going to win SI, what's the one team you're picking if your life was on the line?
BDS.
I would say the same. Obviously not counting Sonics, but if you put a gun to my head and I had to pick one team to have the most confidence, gotta go BDS, I think. And then probably Liquid would be second.
Yeah, BDS, Liquid, 1-2.
Okay, so that's going to do it for our SI prediction podcast. SI begins on the 7th. And for my North American friends, this is a SI that's going to be a little more friendly time zone-wise to us. Last year it was in Sweden. And then I feel like every major almost is in EU, so it's never very favorable time zone-wise to NA, but finally we get one here. And for those of you who are going to go to SI for the playoffs, I don't know if you've seen, but it's like -15, -20 degrees in Montreal, so bring like a lot of hoodies and jackets, or you will freeze your ass off. If the Sonics make the playoffs, I will be there. If you want to come up to me for an autograph or photo or whatever, you can do so. The podcast hasn't come out yet that we did with like Citizen and Darren and Pablo. But if you come up to me, just make sure you washed your armpits and you brushed your teeth, because the last thing I need is some stinky fucking gamer dude come up to me like, "Hey bro, can I get a picture?" And it's just like dog shit smell all over him. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be better than dog shit. But yeah, all right, that's it for us. Interested to see SI. I will be co-streaming it starting on the 7th, and I'll see you there.